Good evening and welcome to the Town of Derry Planning Board meeting for Wednesday, September 4th, 2024. We start our meetings with a Pledge of Allegiance, so if you would rise and join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Since we have some folks in our live audience tonight, I'll remind you of the emergency exits in case there is an alarm activation. There's an exit at the rear of the room where you came in. There's also an emergency exit to my right, to your left. The elevators will not be usable during an alarm activation. You'll need to wait for first responders if you require assistance. Please take a moment to silence your ubiquitous mobile devices. And then we'll get started. I will first indicate that we are still doing remote participation as well as live. If you want to call into the meeting and you're at home, you can visit www.zoom.us and enter the meeting ID 754-663-912. You can also come in by phone, and the phone number is area code 646-558-8656. The meeting ID to enter is the same, 754-663-912. And if you're on the phone, you can toggle *9 to raise your hand to be recognized, *6 to mute and unmute yourself. If you are on the Zoom video, there's a little button to raise your hand to be recognized. At this point, I will introduce the members and staff. We have with us Ms. Liz Robideau, who has just claimed the planning director seat in the absence and retirement of our esteemed Mr. Sioris. However, she's a familiar face to almost all of us because she was here before, and we stole her back. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening.
In our back is our clerk, Ms. Caravello.
Good evening.
And Town Administrator Representative, Mr. Chase.
Evening.
Member, Mr. Healy.
Good evening.
Town Council Liaison, Mr. Grenice.
Good evening.
Vice Chair, Mr. O'Connor.
Good evening.
And to the far left, we have our Engineering Representative, Mr. LaRue.
Good evening.
Ms. Lavoie, who is our alternate.
Good evening.
And I will ask you to sit tonight for Chris Feinauer.
Of course.
Mr. Malaby, who's our secretary.
Good evening.
And member, Mr. Myers.
Good evening.
I'm Dave Nelson, the chair. So having gotten all the administratia out of the way, we can go on to matters of escrow. First item on the agenda tonight is item number 24-25, Keystone Dairy LLC, parcel ID 05039. Ms. Robideau?
Okay. So this request tonight is to establish escrow in the amount of $43,750 for the project. And this is for the fair share contribution towards the future signal improvements at Webster's Corner. All of the projects in the West Running Brook district, if they have any type of impact, traffic impact on that intersection, are requested to do that. And so this is their portion.
Mr. Chair, I so move.
Second.
Moved by O'Connor, seconded by Malaby to approve the escrow as presented. I will poll the board. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Grenice?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Lavoie?
Yes.
Mr. Malaby?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Next item on the agenda is item number 24-26, Bangor Savings Bank, parcel ID 31072.
Okay, this one is for the recently approved Bangor Bank, which is going to be on the lot where the Nestle Toll House and the former Pizza Hut resided. Escrow is an irrevocable letter of credit, which will expire in 1 year, and it's in the amount of $88,368.30. This is non-interest bearing.
Mr. Chair, seeing nobody raising questions, I so move it.
Second.
Moved by O'Connor, seconded by Malaby to approve the escrow as presented. I will poll the board. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Grenice?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Lavoy?
Yes.
Mr. Malaby?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. And finally, under escrow, we have item number 24-27, Martin and Rihanna Parkarski? I'm sure I murdered that, but it's parcel ID 21009.
Okay, so for 75 Ford Way Extension, this is actually a cash escrow in the amount of $25,869.25, and this is for construction on the site.
Mr. Chair, I so move.
Second.
Moved by O'Connor, seconded by Maloney to approve the escrow as presented. We'll pull the board. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Grenice?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Lavoy?
Yes.
Mr. Malaby?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Next on the agenda is approval of minutes. We have before us the minutes of August 14th, 2024. Has everyone had a chance to review those? And has anyone noted any errors or omissions?
Mr. Chair, there was a slight adjustment to there on page 4 of 18, where they added the town of Derry, New Hampshire.
4.
And that's under the planning director chairman updates.
Oh, okay. Excellent. Any other
Seeing none,
or omissions?
then I move to accept them as corrected or amended.
Second.
Moved by O'Connor, seconded by Maloney to accept as amended. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay? Any abstentions?
I have to abstain, I wasn't there.
Once again, everyone else votes in favor, the minutes are approved. Next item on the agenda is correspondence, and I can leave Mr. Malaby by saying there is none tonight. We move on to other business. We have a review of a sign in the traditional business overlay district, parcel ID 30161 49 East Broadway, Unit 2, and the business is called Chick Hill.
Okay, thank you. So we've received a sign application for the new, I believe, the bakery at this address, and pursuant to the zoning ordinance and TBD, any sign proposed in that district needs review by the planning board to make sure that it meets the particular sign regs and looks, good district and fits the character. So you have a copy of that sign.
So this is on Bird Street near the intersection of Crystal?
It is in the Leo Lampe's building.
Okay, great. What is the board's pleasure?
Mr. Chair, then I move pursuant to the Town of Derry zoning ordinance, Article 12, signs, Section 165-101.5, sign TBD to approve the sign design presented for Chickadee Hills, parcel 30161, 49 East Broadway, Unit 2, as presented. The board finds the sign is incompatible with the surrounding buildings, meets the regulations contained in the ordinance, and complements architecture.
Second.
Moved by O'Connor, second by Malaby to approve the sign as presented. We'll pull the board. Mr. Chase?
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Grenice?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Ms. LeBeau? Ms. Malaby?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Big improvement there, yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you, we now have planning director and chairman updates. Do you have updates?
The only thing I would say is that next meeting, a lot line adjustment, Lake State's coming before the board in the ongoing development in that area. And at some point, we should out setting up a goals workshop to see, to talk about legislative changes that to be incorporated into our regulations. Maybe at the next meeting, we could set aside some time to think about it.
Yes, yes. The legislature has been so busy this year, and some of those changes are in effect, and some of them take the first of the year and then later in 2025, and so we need to get in front of those and make sure our regs are in compliance, so
Mr.
do that.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. O'Connor.
I don't have the exact information on me right now, but the state planning department has a special webinar coming on specifically just for zoning and planning board new updates for the legislature. So I think coming next week, but I'll go back home and look up under the planning there because they have a new director up there too.
I used to be on their mailing list. I'll have to see if I got that.
Okay. And I can verify too. I can have a discussion with Noah and make sure that we're
Yeah.
on that list. Okay.
Right, in terms of chairman updates, I will have to again say, since we have two absent, vacant alternate positions, I would encourage anyone in the town who thinks we're having a lot of fun here and wants to help out, to go to the town website where the I believe it's Sheila Bodenreeder who manages that. Submit your application, and you will be reviewed by the council, and we can fill those vacant slots. Thank you. Next is a public hearing for Humphrey Road LLC, Timothy J. Butterfield, June 1997 revocable trust, Timothy J. Butterfield trustee, Sharon L. Butterfield, June 1977 revocable trust, Sharon L. Butterfield trustee, parcel IDs 05062, 05063, 05064, and 05065-001, 1, 2, 3, and 4 Humphrey Road. It is a mixed-use development site plan review.
Okay. So I prepared an extremely lengthy staff report for the board. I will summarize that. So the West Running Brook Farm project has been in development for many years. It started at least around 2020. The Conservation Commission and the Highway Safety Committee have both reviewed this project. The board has before it this evening the final design, which has had more meetings with staff than we can even record. So at least 2 formal TRC meetings took place and some other discussions. This project is in the West Running Brook zoning district, which is a very unique district. It's set up specifically to be flexible and to have everything but the uses able to be waived by the planning board. So if there's something in the design of the project that doesn't quite meet our regulations, the board has the authority in the zoning ordinance to work with the applicant and waive those rather than going for a variance. The district is really unique given the topography and where it's located, and when the district was established, the board was very keen on making sure that any development in the district kind of maintain the integrity and history and the character of the area. This project consists of 4 parcels, all owned by the Butterfield family. 2 are on the north side of Humphrey Road, 2 are on the south side. The land has West Running Brook School around it, the Grandview Flea Market on one side, residential uses, Westbrook Inn, and the fairways are all around this project. The project is consisting of 39 townhouses, 48 condominiums located in a 4-story building with a garage under, a mixed-use building containing 14,000 square feet of retail on the first floor with 24 residential units above, and also a 5,600 square foot restaurant. On the south side, there's 11,200 square feet of proposed restaurant with mixed use in the remaining portion of the building with 11,200 square feet of manufacturing, 5,000 square feet of warehouse, and 2,100 square feet of office. Humphrey Road will be slightly widened and realigned. You have you have a whole site plan package, architectural package, roadway package, and also a separate landscape plan. School impact assessments were provided. It's estimated there'll be 7 school-aged children expected from this development. And the consultant also provided estimates for proposed vehicle registration and tax revenue for this project once fully built. There was a very robust traffic study, which was also reviewed by New Hampshire DOT. There's a lot of connectivity with regard to paths, which meets one of the goals of the district, and the applicant can go into more detail on that. There were 9 waiver requests, which the applicant will go into more detail later. Things that I would like to bring to the attention of the board. Voluntary mergers will have to be approved to combine the lots north and south. Those can be conditions precedent. Warehousing space, because of the way the district is worded, it needs to be limited to 5,000 square feet, and it can't be used for self-storage. DPW has some plan detail comments to be addressed. A few of those should probably be discussed this evening to make sure that everyone is on the same page, and Mr. LaRue can speak to those. Impact fees for the future improvements at the Island Pond Route 28 intersection will need to be assessed for this project, and we can get that number for you. Impact fees, for those who are not aware, we can only hold those for 6 years. If they're not utilized, they get returned to the applicant. And it would be a DOT project, not a town project at that intersection. So phasing of the project really should be discussed in depth, and any associated conditions that the board wants to impose with regard to phasing really need to be iterated. Any approval granted by this board following that, town council will have to accept the modifications in the new roadway alignment for Humphrey Road. This project will require water and sewer connection fees payable to the town of Derry, and so we'd recommend that you might reach out to Tom Carrier, the Deputy Director of Public Works, to kind of get an idea of those assessments. Any signage is reviewed by the planning board before you can get a sign permit. Any tenants will have to follow change of use. And there are a couple questions about restaurant and retail loading areas, hours of operation for businesses. Those would probably be discussed more during change of use, but there should be some idea of what those might be so that the abutters are aware. Drainage easement language would need to be reviewed by the town staff prior to recording. The application has received its alteration of terrain permit, and outstanding approvals include New Hampshire DOT driveway, Derry driveway permit, and the DES sewer connection permit. Given the breadth of this project, I would recommend that the board permit the developer to explain the project. The board move forward to accept the application as complete, determine regional impact this evening, and then move to schedule a site walk. The hearing could be continued to a date certain, at which time all the abutters and interested parties can weigh in on the project.
Okay, thank you. At this point, we'd like to invite the applicant to give a summary of the project.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to present this plan this evening, which in my career, which is close to 40 years, I think sets the record for longest time for start to finish. But before we get into it, I want to thank Ms. Robideau, who was with us in the beginning of it before her departure for a short time to Derry, who gave us a lot of good advice and assistance along the way. And I don't know if I want to give my thanks or sympathies to Mr. LaRue, who probably suffered through a lot of the design changes with us on a regular basis. I can't count the number of meetings that he sat through and gave us constructive feedback and worked with the engineers.
So could you just give us your name and affiliation for the tape?
Sure. John Cronin, counsel for the applicant. I'm with Cronin, Biston and Zielinski in Manchester. So with us here this evening is Dr. Timothy Butterfield and his wife Sharon. They are the owners of the property and well-known in the community. Seated to my right is Shane Gendron. He's with Herbert and Associates, who has done a lot of the oversight with the engineering and survey work and design, assisted by Melissa Rundy, who's with us. Lee Berard from Berard Martel Architects is here. In the event there's any architectural questions or comments he can answer. And Joe Griffin from the Civil Engineers, who did the detail work, a lot of it being with respect to the drainage, which needed a lot of revisions from its original concept to get where it is today. Frank Kozalka is also with us. He's from VHB. He dealt with the road design and off-site improvements with his colleague Jason Plord, who was not able to be with us here this evening. The staff report, which is detailed, identifies the project in scope, and the plan up before you on the board shows the final design. Its final outcome has a lot to do with comments that were received from members of this board when we were here for our last conceptual. I don't recall exactly where that was. At the time, I'll call it the core apartment structure in the middle of the site was much larger and it was higher. There was some comments about reducing that in scale and size and relocating some of the apartments to the front building, which provides the retail space, so it provided symmetry and step up from 28. That was achieved, as you can see in the design, calls for that building out front that will have the retail commercial space on the lower level with apartment living on the upper floors, which is consistent with mixed use and the live, work, and play design that we're going for. As you look to the south of the north parcel, which we're looking at now, you also have that restaurant site that's sitting out there, a pad to anchor the commercial retail flavor as you go along the frontage of the main commercial artery. Along the roadway, there's be improvements, both off-site improvements. The main one, I think, is the realignment of Humphrey Road and the improvement with some turn lanes there. A significant amount of work was done both by Mr. LaRue and Mr. Griffin to get that to where it needs to be, to get it to a final application. There's been a long-standing discussions with DOT and review. We have no negative reports back. Their process is lengthy, take a lot of time in the queue to get what you need from them and get a final approval, but it's anticipated based on all our expert feedback that they are satisfied with the layout and it meets their requirements. With respect to the south side, there are two buildings over there. The front-facing one is 11,200 square feet. When this concept started about 5 years ago, there was interest and a hope that a brew pub that was currently in town would relocate to that site, and that vision kind of shaped the way that building was aligned. Unfortunately, with the passage of time and it being of the essence for other businesses, that opportunity may have passed us by. There's other people that have voiced general interest for that site, and I note the condition that any change would require a change of use analysis from the board. So until that specific tenant is verified and confirmed, it's still a little bit up in the air, but the building design remains the same. Who will occupy it is unknown. The rear section has been, again, varied interest from a test kitchen to gymnastics facility that has competitive gymnastics events and training and coaching and that sort of thing. And then we have the variable apartment and townhouse living opportunities, which, as we all know, the state is short tens of thousands of units to meet the demand. We see what's happened down at the Tuscan Kitchen development, and that's traveling north. You see a great similar development to this, some standalone in the greater Manchester area extending up to Concord. So there certainly is a demand, and people are trying to meet it the best way that they can. As far as to give you some more context and flavor for the site, Shane and his team have a flyover that kind of gives you a look of what it would look like from bird's eye view, and maybe we can run that now. Shane, would that be possible?
I think so.
That's going along the frontage there, as you can see, at 28. And this is a standalone restaurant. Maybe if Cracker Barrel is watching, they might want to come and locate there, although I know they prefer immediate interstate access.
That hurt.
It should be music.
Can you hum, John?
No, but you don't want me to hum or to add music. Would not be good. But you can see the circle on your plan there that showed at the end of the townhouse area. They have that circle with the gazebo and the public area, or shall I say the community area for this development. So that will provide an amenity for the residents. In addition to some of the other things that are provided, there is a path that goes along the north side of the site. There was interaction with the school officials there. Part of it's existing. It will go back and forth from this particular property onto school land and designed to go down towards the back. My understanding is at some point it may be an interest of the town to pick that up and connect it to the ball fields at a later date. We'll talk about that in a little more detail in the waiver section when we get to it. Another benefit being offered by the Butterfields, and this was a product of discussions, there is a culvert south of the south lot or adjacent to it that goes under Route 28. There's a brook or that runs under there. There's an existing culvert. In the future, if there's a need to widen that road, which there isn't now, according to our analysis, the traffic study in the DOT, the Butterfields are going to grant an easement to the town or to the state so that that land is available to do whatever widening may be necessary in the future. In terms of the permitting that's been undertaken, Ms. Robideau was correct, the AOT is in place. We do need the DOT permit and a town driveway permit, which would be forthcoming. Also, its sewer connection would also be requested a permit. And I think that's done kind of in tandem between the town and the state, and it's usually done as a condition of approval because they need the details of the final plan to look at what you're doing, what you're building, and Mark may correct me, but I don't think they actually issue the final permit until it's actually built according to their specifications or connected properly, you know, that the work is done. So that's another issue that's out there. In terms of the drainage, again, it was, the first generation of it was a good effort, but it was not compliant with what your regulations called for. So it was redesigned to provide separate and independent drainage facilities for both the south and the north parcels. So that is at a point now where it's worked, and I think Mr. Griffin and Mr. LaRue have come to a consensus on the drainage. With respect to the loading areas, we can work between the next meeting to try and put some generic loading on there. A lot of it will be tenant-driven, and when we actually get a tenant and come in for an occupancy permit for it, it may require some tweaking or some revision to the plan, but I think we can freshen it up, at least so that we have a safe harbor as we get to a final hearing on that. In terms of the phasing, I'm going to ask Shane to take a moment and discuss with you his vision on how this will be phased.
Sure. For the record, Shane Gender and Herbert Associates. As part of the plan set, I think it's page 88 of your plan set. I don't know if we can get there on. Probably going to take a minute. '86, I'm sorry.
Oh, and stop when you get to bright colors.
Yeah.
There you go.
And our apologies, this is a big plan set, it's a big project, so. The phasing, the way we had set it up is basically phase one is the green for the northern parcel. The northern parcel is phased, the southern parcel really is, it would be done in one phase. So we have, the southern parcel is phase 4, but the southern parcel could be perhaps constructed prior to the northern parcel. But looking at the northern parcel in a phased approach, to the south, the connection off of Humphrey Road, the driveway coming in, that needs to be established along with any drainage in that area, because that's basically our low point on that lot. So all of our drainage is coming there. We have some major areas of catchment for the drainage that need to be established prior to establishing phase 2 or 3. Once you go into the phase 2, the blue section, they'd be adding a lot more parking, and we need to obviously have that water to be able to go somewhere and be treated. And then the final phase would be the townhomes to the back, and obviously the gazebo and the park areas. Also, I don't know if John had mentioned, but there's also a dog park and a pickleball court to the back of the townhomes that's offered as recreation for the residential. But that's how we see it coming together, and that's how it's presented to AOT, so that the site is established properly, and the drainage is handled in the construction process.
On page 2 of the staff report, there were some comments, and I can go through them, Mr. Chair, just to identify the things. I think most of these are acknowledged, the things that we have to meet, and there's no issue with them. Voluntary merger, certainly upon approval, that would be something that we would do in the ordinary course. We acknowledge the limitation on the warehousing space. The DPW plan detail comments, which we did get by separate email, we can address those and update them. Impact fees, we're aware that they're out there. Mr. Griffin, I think, and Mr. Genren need to get together with the appropriate parties to determine what those numbers will be, but we acknowledge that's part of a plan of this size and scale. Shane took care of the phasing. We are aware and recognize that we need to go to the town council for modifications of Humphrey Road. That would be something that we would have to do. The water and sewer connection fees, we're aware of those as well. The signage, again, will be tenant and user dependent, and we'll have to do sign permit applications at the appropriate time. And again, we acknowledge that the future tenants would have to follow the change of use process. And we'll take a look at the loading areas, at least to put a placeholder until we determine who those folks would be. And the drainage easement we can provide to you for review or council's review. Pretty standard form, but we can get it for you. I think we've done others for this town that the form has been acceptable, and we'll just have to get the language right of the specifics. In terms of waivers, there's 9 waivers that are called out. The first one that's in your section relates to parking. The strict calculations require 316 parking spaces, 304 are provided. 40 of those, I believe, are in the podium under the main building, so we're 12 short. But you look at mixed-use development like this and alternating uses in times, it generally works well, where you have switch of demand for the various parking spots. So we'd be seeking a waiver on the parking requirement. There's also a request not to provide the sidewalks along the road frontage. I believe that's been discussed with Mark and his team, and that was a reasonable request, but certainly up to for you folks to review. The next waiver was not to provide public space outside the retail area. I think that one's pretty straightforward. Solid waste storage, 25 feet of the property, again, straightforward. The only one that I think that may require some discussion, it's not in this, the pipe cover is okay, and the grade of less than 1.5%. We've worked with Mark on that. Joe Griffin has come up with some ways to use a different type of pipe, a concrete, I believe, rather than a PVC pipe, and do that layering that would be correct. One of the issues I believe that's something that we need to work further with is the width of the path. I think we propose a dimension that's not quite to the desired width of it, and part of that is due to the drainage ramifications. It's a steeply sloping lot, and the elevations are there. For the use that's proposed for it along the access and being an add-on benefit provided by the applicant, we're hopeful that we can work with Mark to maybe sort that out, and if not, the board can address it and resolve it as they see fit. So that's pretty much it in summary. I know the staff report is comprehensive. I don't want to repeat a lot of detail, but we have the whole team available here to answer any specific questions for you. It's our hope this evening that you would accept jurisdiction as a completed plan. We'll work with you to arrange the site walk and expect there'd be a public hearing to hear input from the public. There was a letter from a member of the public, one with probably the most impact, and a butter who I think is sincere in saying his preference would be that nothing around him ever gets developed, but that's not a real sense of reality, and what's proposed is well done, and I interpret his letter to be that he's supportive.
Thank you very much. Let me ask if you or the engineering staff or anyone on the development team have received the memorandum from Wright Pierce dated August 28th of this year. These are our external consultant engineers. It's a 4-page memo, and as I review it, he brings up some things that are more than just Scribner's issues that sound like they're technical issues that need engineering resolution. For example, on the top of page 2, he says, town comments regarding the retaining wall have not been addressed. It may be impractical to construct. All profiles should show drainage ports and pipes, final stamp designs. And the question that closes was there a structural engineer working on these additional details?
Mr. Griffin reports that he hasn't seen that letter yet, so if we can get a copy of it, we can ask him to take
Okay, I thought that was emailed to you guys when we received it, but we'll send it
It
today.
may have been.
Okay.
I certainly don't have knowledge or the expertise to respond to it,
Okay.
so.
Okay, so that was one of the reasons I brought it up. Typically, for the plans of this scale, we make a condition of approval to be compliance and with all the suggestions and resolving all the open issues in the consultant engineer's report. So if you haven't actually had a chance to study it, that would be a good thing to do between now and any continuance, so that you can address those issues.
Mr. Griffin certainly would give him this and instruct him to reach out to the review engineer, and this is typical to work through those issues. My expectation that they would be resolvable. If not, at least we would have them available for you to discuss and review.
Okay. At this point, I would seek a motion to open the public hearing.
I
So-
move
Second.
to open the public hearing.
Second.
Moved by O'Connor, seconded by Myers to open the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Public hearing is open. If any member of the audience physically present tonight or anyone out in TV land / cyberspace has questions or comments, please request to be recognized. We have changed our procedures recently. I'm addressing this to the engineer and the attorney. So the way it works is if you have a question, you go to this microphone over here, and the applicant continues to sit there, and you have a dialogue. We don't actually continue to play musical chairs. So does anyone have any questions or comments in the room?
Mr. Chair, seeing none, rise online.
Mr. Carden?
Mr. Chair. Liz has a,
I don't know.
I think Liz had a comment.
Okay.
Hello? Okay, good. Good evening, board members.
All right, so before we take public comments, the board has a couple things to do. And we'll leave the public hearing open until everyone has all of their questions answered.
Okay.
Okay? So a couple of things that we have to do by state law is, one, we have to accept jurisdiction, meaning we think it's a sufficiently completed application to start consideration. What is the board's pleasure on that?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to move to accept jurisdiction of the mixed-use site plan before the board for Humphrey Road LLC, ETALPID 05062, 05063, 05064, and 05065-001, 1, 2, 3, and 4 Humphrey Road.
Second.
Moved by Grenese, seconded by Myers to accept jurisdiction. Is there any discussion? If not, I'll pull the board. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Grenese?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Lavoy?
Yes.
Mr. Malaby?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. We also are required to make a determination on regional impact. We have a memo in our packet regarding that and a suggested motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion pursuant to RSA 36:56. The board finds proposal as presented at this time meets the definition of a development of regional impact.
Second. Okay, any questions on this? We will always lead off with Mr. Chase, who will guide us.
No, despite the size of this project, it is local. It does not meet the qualifications to be that of determination of regional impact.
Mr. Healy?
No, for the same reasons as Mr. Chase.
Mr. Grenice?
No, for the same reasons.
Mr. O'Connor?
I agree with the same reason.
Ms. Lavoy?
No, for the same reasons.
Mr. Malaby?
No, for the same reasons as Mr. Chase.
Mr. Myers?
Yeah, in addition to that, I'm reading the staff report that we received, and so no regional impact.
And the chair will also concur with Mr. Chase, no regional impact. So now, having those things out of the way, we can now entertain Mr. Cardin's question.
Hey, good evening, board members. Welcome back, Ms. Robidoux. Nice to see you. I have just a couple of comments, couple of questions. One is concerning the phasing in of any of the business and commercial. What is being done to ensure that those businesses and commercial are going to be intact as the project moves along?
So again, I invite the applicant's representatives to come sit at the dais here and answer the questions interactively, because we discovered making a list and then answering them at the end just didn't serve transparency well. So we have a new procedure.
Want to take that one?
What was the question?
How do you know that the commercial is going to get built in connection with the apartments?
I mean, the commercial is really, the first phase of any of the buildings that get constructed. You've got the restaurant pad and then the mixed-use building to the front on 28. That's a bulk of the commercial right there. Most of your residential is happening probably, the big building could come in that phase as well, but, it's got to be built all in unison. So big part of your commercial is in that second phase. And I'm sure the town can condition it on the commercial being constructed.
Yeah, Mr. Card, we do need your name and address for the tape,
I'm sorry?
please. Could you give us your name and address for
Oh,
the
yeah,
tape?
I'm sorry. Yeah, Tom Carden, 2 Cunningham Drive.
Thank you.
So are there businesses lined up for these? I think one of the most important components of these projects are that, that it is a mixed use. And, one of my biggest concerns is that you're going to have these, these apartments and condominiums built, and there's not going to be any mixed use. So that's my concern. That's why I'm asking that question.
Yeah, I think I can add to it. As far as tenants being lined up, specifically, no. And part of that is based on time. If you consider that this was started 5 years ago, and we don't know when final approval will be issued, and then you go through a financing phase. If you're a tenant and want to put a restaurant in, you're probably not going to wait 2 years to get situated. So you really have to get it going first. One of the things that should give you confidence as to how this gets done, this is a little bit different, where it's an integrated site that will be merged rather than a series of different sites that can be developed independently. Nobody is going to want to move into one of those living units
Correct.
with an incomplete site or the streetscape looking
Right.
lousy. I would think the development, to start off, as Shane said, one of the members of the board that recommended bringing some of the residential to the front really gives you a basis to do that building early, right? You get your streetscape view, make it look really pretty and landscape it, plus you get some revenue from the upper levels. These projects, in the 5 years since we started, the cost
Right.
to do them just skyrocketed.
Right.
So no one could afford to go into this doing it partially.
Right.
You need to build this as it's shown to make it work, at least on the 2 separate parcels.
Okay, yeah, I know, and I think kind of the way that the ordinance is written, it gives you the impression that, that the businesses should be up and running before you build the whole building, but I know that's not accurate, and I pretty much know it's not reasonable either, so I was very curious about that. The other one was I read that there was, that you had requested waivers for the sidewalks. I didn't hear you speak about that when you
I'm going to
spoke.
turn that over to Shane. That was more of an engineering
Okay.
discussion as far as the viability and need for those sidewalks.
Yeah,
Sure. So we had met with the school district back about a year and a half ago to talk about some improvements on the school district and how we were going to connect with the school property. And one of the discussions was about the sidewalks, because obviously with the school being there, you have school children that are coming from the fairways over across Route 28, coming onto the school property, and then obviously they're going to want to come onto our property. And what we wanted to do was set it up in a way that is safe for school children or anyone really to travel between the two sites. Coming down Route 28, it's a busy road. You've got multiple different queuing lanes happening with this project and with the school. There really just isn't room for a sidewalk down 38. They also felt that it would be a sidewalk to nowhere. We have created an ADA compliant sidewalk ramp up to the northwestern corner of the property, up above that mixed use building, that will connect with the school as far as a sidewalk. But we're not running a sidewalk down the frontage of the units of the property. And part of it is we have an entrance, one way in, one way out entrance that the sidewalk would have to cross. So you'd have multiple points of where somebody would have to cross a road, and we felt that it was probably not the safest situation. So we wanted to bring people onto the site. We've created a sidewalk up to that northern corner that comes onto the sidewalk for the commercial buildings. We think that's where people would be directed. They're either going to come in and they're going to want to make use of the commercial shops on the first floor, or they're going to want to go to the restaurant. So we thought that made the most sense, rather than putting them on a sidewalk down Route 28 to nowhere, basically.
I agree. I think 28 would be ridiculous. What about Humphrey Road? Will there be a sidewalk going along
No,
Humphrey Road?
there's no proposal for a sidewalk on Humphrey Road.
Okay, I mean, the thing I like about that, I mean, you know, obviously you can only put a sidewalk in on the property and, you know, Dr. Butterfield's property going up, and that it ends at some point. But, you know, I know sidewalks to nowhere was probably a thing, but I was thinking that at some point in the future, they might want to extend that because of Donball Park up there. People could go from the, you know, from the development and walk up to the park. That's why I was questioning the sidewalks to nowhere. Yeah, okay. You know, and you know, some of you know I've been pretty outspoken about these projects for the last several years. I'm concerned about the effect that it's going to have on the infrastructure, you know, fire, police, water, sewerage, and I'm especially concerned about traffic. You know, and given the number of all these projects that are going to be in place, I can't imagine what the circle is going to look like in the morning, people going to work, and you know, especially in the afternoon. And so yeah, so I'm not a fan of these projects. That being said, out of the 3 projects that I've seen, I think this is one of the best ones. I like the project, you know, in terms of, you know, the commercial retail development, and again, not a fan of it, but I think it's the best that's been shown to the council and the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else present in the room has questions or comments?
Could I add one thing?
No? Anyone online, Mr. Adventure? Okay. Ms. Robideau?
I just wanted to add that one of the abutters who could not be here tonight, he lives at 10 Humphrey, Mr. DiCario. I may be massacring his last name. He came into the office today to look at the plan. His concern, he owns the property at the back, adjacent to the park, so on the north side. His concern is drainage coming into the wetland and adding water onto his property. So I don't know if you could speak to that just a little bit.
So, as it was stated earlier, we've already received our AOT permit. So obviously, when we look at a site like this, we have to match our pre and our post peak flows for development. All of that has been addressed. All of that has been approved by the state of New Hampshire. So we're real confident in the drainage. A lot of time has gone into it. Joe spent a lot of time with Mark coming up with some really interesting ways of dealing with the drainage. But specifically that rear section of the property, I wouldn't be concerned about, only because it's almost the highest point on the property as well. So really all your drainage is coming down the site towards Humphrey Road. It's being treated towards Humphrey Road and then released.
Thank you.
Okay. So I had a couple of questions about phasing, there's not any sellable, rentable space in Phase 1, so what's that all about?
So phase one is just an establishment of your site, and that's pretty typical with any construction site, is that you have to establish a construction entrance. You have to be able to get equipment onto the property, and you have to do it in a stable manner. So you need a construction entrance, you need ability to get equipment in and out and not be putting sediment out into the roadway. And then you need to establish some drainage so that anything that's coming down off the site as you open that site up is being treated and contained on site. So that's why phase one is strictly just construction of stabilization and drainage.
Does that have anything to do with requirements for active and substantial completion or anything like that?
No, it's just establishment of the site per AOT regulations. So you can't open up too much of this site at one time, and you need to treat your drainage. You need to treat anything coming off that lot before you start opening up more of it. You can't open something up and not have a place for that water to go and be treated.
Understood. So do you have any idea, and I'm asking for speculation here, the relative timing of the remaining phases?
I don't think anyone's going to start Phase 1 to do the construction entrance until they're ready to proceed with some active and substantial construction of the parcel, whether it's the south or the north. Once you go in and do that, you don't want to have an unstable site that's sitting there waiting to go forward. So as I envision it, you get it approved, you get your financing in place, you start your site work, you get your foundations in, or at least some of them, so that you can get going to work and do it gradually.
And it would be fair to say that the last phase, Phase 4, which is on the opposite side of Humphrey Road, given its use for commercial uses and its separation, that might be something that would be substantially different in time?
Yeah, I think it could be contemporaneous. I think if the right person came along for one of those spaces, that's probably what you would need to get your financing in place, and you could go forward and build it. So you might do both sides at the same time, or certainly the south side could go ahead independently of the north side.
Okay, so we'll probably have to have some discussion with the staff and the board about any potential conditions of approval related to the phasing when we come back to look at that, so maybe we can think about that. I have one techie question. You have in the very nice plan set a diagram that has color-coded paths for utilities, gas, electric, water, sewer. I didn't see one for communications. And my question was, is everyone going to watch TV on their phone, or is there going to be cable or fiber or some sort of communication service included in that utility plan?
It's a good question. We'll look into it and give you a response to that. I'm sure it either is or it isn't. I know a lot of people are streaming today, and but there'll probably be some cable opportunity for people that are there.
Okay. Any other members of the board have questions before we, especially things that we would like them to work on between now and the site walk, or between now and in the continuation, so they can know in advance? Mr. Myers.
Just before I ask my question, a 20-something told me something that only you old guys watch cable anymore, so. Anyhow, be that as it may, I'm sure you'll straighten that out. I guess we're going to have a site walk, so my questions will probably be answered once we get down there and take a look. But 9 waiver requests. 9. I always question this, because why do we have ordinances? Why do we have land use regulations if we're just going to grant 9 waiver requests? And again, I'm sure that these questions will be answered when we get down there. 12, I mean, it seems like a big enough area that I don't know why we would need to have 12 fewer parking spaces. I heard the comment about a sidewalk to nowhere. Nobody wants that. I hope everybody in the room agrees that we want safety for the kids. There's no question about that. But at the same time, when I was driving home tonight, only 3 miles from my local office to my home, I almost hit a runner because there's no sidewalk. And people are going to walk on Route 28. They're going to walk, they're going to skateboard, they're going to ride there. Whether we, in this nice administrative area, think it's okay or not, people are going to be walking, riding, whatever, on Route 28. So when we get down there, I'd like to see why we can't have sidewalks. If everybody says we're going to have sidewalks to nowhere, there won't be any sidewalks. And so the people that are smarter than me that have sat in these seats before and said we should have sidewalks in Derry, they wasted their time. I won't go down all 9 of them, but the other one that just came to my mind is public space outside the retail area. That was something for aesthetic reasons. And so, again, once we get down there, I'm sure you can make a better explanation, but I don't see the need for 9 waiver requests, and those are the ones that just came to my mind. I don't know if you want to address them now or when we get down there.
I'll let you look at it first. I think I'm hopeful that it might shed some light on it, but I just ask you not to be concerned about the number, be concerned about the substance, although it may seem like a lot. You've got a large site here. You've got 2 independent sites, and in comparison to some projects, that would not be an unusual number. So when we get to it, we'll address them as thoroughly as we can, but I just ask that we focus on the substance of the request rather than the number of them.
So one of the follow-on questions to that is, if we're going to look at this and make, findings of fact based on what we see, we're going to need some sort of visual indication of where the various proposed buildings are. We're going to have, stakes and flags and whatnot for us to orient ourselves, right? What do you propose to be able to do about that?
So I can mark as little or as much as you would like. My thought with a site of this size is that it's going to get out of hand really quick if we try to mark everything. So perhaps maybe if on the south side we locate the building. Some of them are going to fall within a field area. Some of them are probably going to be a little bit in a tree line. And I think maybe for the north parcel, it's going to be tough. The restaurant, where the restaurant sits, is in direct conflict with the Butterfield's existing home. But there's enough existing landmarks on there that we can mark some of the corners, and then we can walk around. I'm very familiar with the site. I've been on it for the last 6 years, and I can pretty much lay out where the corners of the buildings are in reference to what's existing out there. So I think we can mark the buildings for the most part and, be standing out in the field or whatever and saying, this is this row of townhomes here or that row of townhomes over there.
Maybe you put markers for the obvious waypoints, and then if you could create a separate sheet, absent of a lot of clutter of detail that called out those waypoints on the plan, so that
Sure.
if I'm standing here and I'm looking at stake number 7, I can look at it on the plan and say, oh, the building's right here.
Sure.
That might help us.
Yep, I think that's fine. We'll give you a stakeout sheet and I can hand them out when we are at the site walk.
Any other questions, requests from members of the board?
I know Mark had his hand up.
I just wanted to touch base, Mr. Chair, on that communication question. Typically, communication and cable lines are installed in unison with the power conduit. So that's usually a package deal that gets installed for those
Okay.
utilities.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what, I actually still watch cable, Andy. I'm one of those old guys. But I also have internet over the same infrastructure, so. Yeah, as long as it wasn't forgotten, that's perfect.
Right.
Any other questions or requests for things to see at the sidewalk, Mr.
I have some
Muniz?
questions about the plan, not about the site walk.
Okay.
So I just want to say, from the first time I saw this years ago, totally different. I like it. Thank you for taking all the comments from us on the board back in the day and looking into that. Couple of questions. So on the south side, that one building is like 22,000 square feet. Is that what I'm reading? It's like 11,000.
That's correct.
And is one of them a restaurant?
Yeah, so originally when we had brought this to the board, I think you were on the board at the time, the one that faces 28, we had envisioned that building as kind of to be a possible home for a brew pub.
Okay.
And so that's kind of the placeholder for that building. We're still, like, as far as the parking calcs, that's still what we've sized it for. And then the other section of the building, we're looking at maybe more of a manufacturing use. Maybe somebody would come in and produce a product where they would need some warehousing space, which is included in there, and some office space, as well as the manufacturing component.
In regards to I totally understand the phase and why you have to do phase 1. And I totally understand, you're not going to build out the commercial or restaurant because there'll be no one there to go there. So you want to build out the infrastructure first, put some housing in, and then put the restaurant in, because people who live there will go to the restaurant. But just throwing something out there. In saying that, you have the one restaurant, and then you have the commercial space, mixed use in that first front building that's looking at 28. And then you look at, you're looking at that south building, proposed phase 4. I'm just throwing something out there. Maybe looking at, you build out phase 1 and 2, then when you start building out phase 3, because you'll start doing the apartments like 30 to 39 and like 29, like maybe, because you have a dog park there, you have the pickleball park there, maybe making that, cutting that in half and doing maybe half of that in phase 3 and doing the other restaurant in phase 3 and then doing the rest of it in phase 4. I'm always suggesting that. I've been down the Villages. A friend of mine bought down the Villages, and I've been looking down there. And I was talking to, I was asking them how they build out so fast and how they build it. And they kind of do the same thing. They say, well, we build out the infrastructure first, we put in some foundations, and if we like to get the common areas done first, and then they build a housing and commercial, and then when they get like 50, 60% of the housing in, they finish out the other commercial part of it for the restaurant. So I'm just throwing something out there. I don't know if that's something you guys wanted to look at.
I think we're amenable to do it, we're flexible, but the market's really going to dictate it, right? If someone comes first and says, gee, I like these housing units, as you say, I want to lock this up to have a restaurant on this site, you want to go and get that in because it will help with the residency. To build the buildings, the apartment building is the most expensive to build, right? Vertical construction costs, and it takes a while to build it before you see a dollar of revenue.
Right.
So it would be advantageous to try and get those commercial pieces up and running. One is an attraction, and one to have, your lender's going to say, I want to see some cash flow here before we go to the next building and make sure all your numbers work.
Right. No, I totally get that. I'm just throwing something out there, because I've been saying it for the 18 years I've been involved in the planning board, is that 28's always been a forgotten part of town. And, we have some nice development going down there, and then we have this down there, and it's a gateway to Derry. So I just, I'm just, that's all I'm thinking. Like if you put housing there, at least there's some place that people can go right in the area. So just throwing something out there.
Great suggestions. You look just a little bit south there over the Wyndham line. You've got some duplex and other housing there that seems to be doing real well in the marketplace. And if you can create a destination center where you can live, you can walk across the street and get something to eat, or go to a shop, or get your clothes cleaned, or whatever, all of that stuff will help get it full. And that's going to be the objective, right? To get it built as quickly as you can, because it's hard to mobilize a crew and send them out there and get part of it built and then send them home and try and schedule them again, which is so difficult. And you're not paying double, but you're paying a pretty heavy premium as opposed to being able to get at least the main bulk of it done while you have your crews available and active.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments from members of the board? Has that,
I guess I have one. So on the sidewalk, what are we really looking at when we get there? Because it's such a large property, piece of land. We're going to be going to this kind of field. What are we, at that point, what are we really looking, I guess, at? Because the plans are pretty clear. I don't know what a sidewalks, Mr. Myers had some good questions. I don't know on the waivers that they're requesting, like what's going to be explained to us at the sidewalk on the parking spaces and all that couldn't be answered, today with his questions. We're going to be looking at a large piece of land and saying, okay, well, maybe we could fit 12 more parking spaces in there. I just don't know how we determine that. Just looking at an open
those
space.
details may be hard to determine, but we could look at things like, does the sidewalk make sense? We could look at some of the topography, some of the retaining wall issues, some of the drainage issues. You're right, it's a complex plan, And that's why I asked the engineer to put in some stakes so that we sort of know where we are on the plan as we're looking at something.
Mr. Chair, just to add to your comment, thank you. I think also, there's a lot of new members on the board who haven't seen this before. And I also think that when we go out there, I'm looking at sheet 87, and it has the expansion of Humphrey, and I think we need to look at that too, so maybe, that's another reason why for the site walk, they can explain all that. Especially you get the new curb cut going in up on, that's a new curb cut on 28. So kind of explain all that too, and the curb cut, both curb cuts on 28. So, plus, maybe we can have, you can walkway right to the big thing in Derry's, the splash pads. Maybe we could have a walkway to the splash pad.
You have a question, Mr. O'Connor?
Yes, this is a informational for a lot of the new board members. A lot of us, some of us here, when we developed the West Running Brook District under the zoning. And I would behoove people to go back and read that there, because then you're gonna understand why we're allowing waivers under conditional use and so forth. So a lot of this took us, 2 or 3 years to go through that particular new zone. It's an innovative zone that gives us the authority, other than one area that has to go back to the ZBA. But other than that, you'll see and read into that and understand what he's saying as far as the waivers go.
So that actually triggers another question. We've talked about waivers. Does this plan require any conditional use permits?
This whole project is approved under a conditional use permit in this zone.
Usually, conditional use permits are specific to an issue, so I'll be curious to see how that gets phrased. Thank you. Anything else?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to say I would like to walk the site, and it's pretty much strictly just to see the sidewalks. It does look like there's plenty of green space, but I can hear a former planning board member right now talking about West Running Brook and how it was created to be walkable. So that's my biggest reason for seeing it and just laying that out.
Mr. LaRue?
I would also like to add for the site walk, Mr. Chair, that maybe want to look at the school portion of the upgrade for the bike path, because that's where we're, I wouldn't say at odds, but we have a certain requirement that we like for bike paths to be contiguous with the extension that Public Works would take to the Don Ball Park.
Okay, so since we're getting up to moving for site walk, will we have the applicant's permission for members of the planning board as well as members of the public to be on the property for the purpose of the site walk?
Yeah, absolutely.
It is a public noticed meeting.
Yeah, absolutely, with the typical indemnities for the public, that they enter at their own risk and assume any liability. It's not a finished site. There's some rough terrain. There's been horses there for a period of time. So with that disclosure, and oftentimes I have a sign-in sheet with a small disclaimer on it, that's easily to read in the right font, so people are aware what they go on it. Now, I haven't had it happen
So
to me.
I guess maybe before we go too far, we should see if we can find a date that we could all agree on, and then if so, we could put that in the motion to have a site walk. Everyone got their phones out and looking at their calendars? What do we think about scheduling?
We're gonna do
Well,
an eve.
So typically, the board either does them, this time of year, we still have light, so early evening is an option. Or otherwise, the board typically will look at a Saturday morning.
I'm trying to remember when it starts to get a little dusky, around 7-ish?
7:30.
Around 7.
yeah.
Mhm.
So is an hour, does everyone think an hour is enough time to do this?
Look at me for.
I'm just looking left and right here.
We can,
Because the other opportunity is to try to do it on a Saturday or something.
Mhm.
Here's the calendar.
Does anyone have a preference for an evening or for a Saturday?
I prefer evening.
Typically Monday nights, because some of us are on other board members, boards also.
Yeah, it depends on which Monday.
Which Monday?
I've got other commitments. Could we pick a Wednesday night when the planning board is in off cycle?
So are you, perhaps the 11th? Is that what you're considering?
It's a week from now.
Yeah, so that would be next week. So if the intent is to continue, hold the site walk and continue the public hearing to our next meeting is the 18th.
So you guys can get ready for everything you need to do the site walk on the 11th?
I think
And
so.
answer all the other technical questions we've thrown at you by the 18th?
I think so.
Okay.
We could always do it on horseback.
I'll just observe that the election is the 10th, and I may be dead after then, but
Yeah,
we'll see.
I won't be able to be here that night, but that's fine.
Because if we go for later in the month, then we have less daylight, and we push the meeting to another month, so. Does anyone want to make a motion to schedule a site walk and pick a date?
All right, I'll make a motion that we do a site walk with respect to the plan that's before us right now, next Wednesday, September 11th, at what, 6 o'clock,
6 p.m.?
6 p.m.?
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
It is moved by Myers, seconded by Grenice, to hold a site walk on the 11th. I will poll the board. Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr. Healy.
Yes.
Mr. Grenice.
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor.
Yes.
Ms. Lavoy.
Yes.
Mr. Malaby.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. At this point, it would be, in order to have a motion to continue this hearing until September 18th.
I move to continue this plan to our next scheduled meeting, which would be September 18th,
Second.
2024.
Second.
18th?
What's that?
Gosh.
All right, so it's moved by Grenice, seconded by Myers to continue this to a date certain, being September 18th. Any discussion? We'll pull the board. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Grenice?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Lavoy?
Yes.
Mr. Malaby?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. And for the public who are here and watching on TV, because it's a continuation, there will be no more certified letter notice. This motion is your notice of both the site walk and the continuation. And we will pick up the public hearing on that date. And at this point, we need to stop discussion of this plan. All right, do we have anything else on our agenda?
Thank you all. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I just confirmed that the webinar is on September 19th from noon to 1:30, and it's changes to planning and zoning laws in 2024.
All right, let's
And as
give
soon as
you-
I get a link,
Send that out to us as a reminder?
Yep,
Excellent, thank
You're
you,
going to
John.
send it to us?
I'll send it.
Is there any other business to come before the board? Board member comments? Anyone have comments? Mr. Grenice?
Comment. I don't know if you're going to mention, you're going to talk about the election?
Sure.
I'll let you do that.
In addition to my fun as planning board, I am also the current town moderator, which means I'm running that interesting show on September 10th. We have a primary election for state offices, and we're hoping that we get a pretty good turnout of voters. The polls will open at 7 a.m. and they will close at 8 p.m. or when the last voter has cast his ballot. And we invite you to all turn out. It will be at the Hackler Gymnasium on the Pinkerton Academy campus. There should be plenty of parking. We're not rerouting any traffic, so access should be reasonable. And so we ask you to all come out and vote. Any other comments?
And I
I'll
just,
Oh, go ahead.
in my other comment, I figured you'd mention that about the park and stuff like that. I just want to throw a shout out to George. I hope he's watching. So, hi, George.
Hi, George.
We miss you. There's an opening, alternates.
slow withdrawal.
Do you have a comment, Mr. Myers?
I would welcome Elizabeth. Oh, yeah, well, she's always done a great job, and I'm glad she's back. My only comment is I will be so glad when this election is over, because I've never seen more horrible, nasty, negative, terrible ads on both sides. So this is, I'm not casting aspersions on any party or any individual, but everybody who's running should be ashamed of themselves for the ads this year.
Okay. Any other comments?
And I concur. I mean, we're glad to have Liz back. I said some things that when she was confirmed and at the council meeting, so it's good to have her back.
Thank you.
Okay,
Good to
well,
be back. Yeah.
I welcomed her back very appropriately, and gave her my kudos and at George's going away when she was also there. So
I just hope there's money in the budget. We'll have to find something to get you a new name tag instead of a paper one.
It's on order.
anything else? Board comments?
Motion to adjourn.
Yeah, there you go. Is there a second?
I just said second.
Okay, moved by Myers, seconded by Grenice to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned. Bang.
Yeah, where's your gavel?
I don't know. Someone-